I first saw her lying quietly under a broken red gate at an old shrine in the forest, half hidden by some weeds. Her fur was matted with dirt and pine needles, and her thin body looked frail, as if it might vanish completely. You could see her ribs jutting out beneath her torn skin, almost like her bones were trying to break free. As I got closer, her head moved just a bit, and that's when I noticed them. 3 tiny kittens snuggled against her, so small they could fit in my palm, their soft cries reminding me of leaves rustling in the wind. I had come to this tranquil spot in Totori to find some peace, hoping to escape into the slower pace of village life. Yet that morning, the silence was anything but serene. In that moment, I didn't know the names of the cats or how long the mother had been fighting to keep her kittens alive. But I felt, almost without thinking, that walking away would mean they wouldn't last through the night. And oddly enough, I sensed a personal loss if that happened. The shrine was about 2 kilometers from my home, nestled among trees, with moss creeping over worn stone steps and cedar branches blocking the sunlight. I had passed it countless times, often dismissing it as just another forgotten place. But that day it became special for a whole new reason. I crouched down slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. I was worried I might scare her or, even worse, confirm my fears. The mother's eyes opened gradually. They looked dull and unfocused, but had a fierce spark within them. She stayed still, yet her gaze felt like a warning. Don't get too close to my babies. Meanwhile, the kittens were full of energy. One was attempting to climb onto her back, another was hiding under her paw, and the smallest was trembling, breathing in quick, anxious bursts. I had no gloves, no food, and no way to carry them, just a frayed canvas bag and a racing heartbeat. I leaned in and spoke softly to them, hoping my gentle tone would ease their fears. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not here to hurt you." The mother wasn't persuaded. She hissed softly, her lips curling to show her few remaining teeth. It wasn't a loud noise, it felt strained and exhausted, but it was enough to make me freeze. That moment lingered heavily over us. I was unsure if reaching out could make things worse. Should I even try? But then the smallest kitten crawled slowly toward me. I acted on impulse and stretched out my hand, moving slowly and carefully. When the kitten brushed against my fingers, its fur felt damp and a bit sticky. It made a soft sound, almost like it was asking for help. I gently scooped it up and placed it in my satchel, wrapping it with the flannel shirt I had planned to wear later. The mother cat tried to stand, but then fell back down. In that moment, I felt a deep pang of sadness inside me. I quickly grabbed my phone and called Emiko. She used to run the local veterinary clinic before retiring. Without hesitation, she directed me to bring the cats to her. "Be gentle, don't talk, keep them warm," she advised. Gathering the other kittens turned out to be easier than I expected, almost as if they sensed they were being taken to safety. However, lifting the mother cat was different. It felt like I was handling something very precious. She was hot with fever and her breathing was unsteady. Honestly, I wasn't sure she would survive the journey. When we reached Emiko's place, my instincts kicked in. We spread out blankets, prepared fluids, and set a heat lamp over a cardboard box. The kittens huddled together, their wide eyes taking in their new surroundings. Just then, Toma, my neighbor, walked in. With his arms crossed and a frown on his face, he said, "You're bringing strays into your house now? Don't let them get too comfortable." I didn't reply to him, not at that moment. The mother cat was still barely hanging on. Even though Emiko warned me not to get my hopes up, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope inside. 2 days passed, and Emiko named the mother Shizu. She continued to cling to life, but it was clear she was struggling. She hadn't eaten much or moved around, yet the kittens instinctively nursed from her. It was evident that she was holding on for a reason, some deep, fierce love for her little ones. Then came the 3rd night. I had dozed off in the corner of Emiko's spare room, with the cardboard box right next to me. Around 3 a.m., I was jolted awake by a scratching sound. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but then I realized Shizu was trying to drag herself out of the box, her legs shaking, her body weak. She wasn't coming toward me, she was trying to escape. Halfway to the door, she collapsed. I rushed to her side just as Emiko, looking groggy and barefoot, walked into the room. "This might be it," she said quietly. Her voice held an unusual calm, a steady acceptance shaped by her experiences with animals that had passed away. We gently laid her down, but that night didn't bring the end. The surprise came the next morning. Emiko found a faint tattoo behind Shizu's ear, nearly faded, a simple number. This cat had once belonged to someone who had chosen to let her go. Emiko pointed out that the number linked to an illegal breeder that had been shut down years earlier. This revelation made Shizu more than just a stray. She became a symbol of a life disregarded by a system that often overlooks animals in need. The mission to rescue her turned into a quest for something greater, a fight for justice. In the kitchen, Emiko held a slip of paper with the tag number, her hand trembling slightly above the old landline phone. Morning sunlight filtered through the rice paper windows, casting a warm glow on the tatami floor, where the kittens were curled up together, breathing softly and peacefully. Shizu was still alive, though weak. Her breaths were shallow, and her once fearful eyes were now gently closed. Yet, beneath her quiet exterior lay a history filled with pain, abandonment, and suffering, hidden away from the world. I couldn't shake the image of her being bred and left to struggle alone, trapped and forgotten. That afternoon, Toma returned. His steps were heavier, and his face displayed a mix of emotions that I found hard to interpret. He glanced at the kittens, but remained silent, then moved to the porch to light a cigarette, letting the smoke disappear into the air. I didn't expect much sympathy from him, but then he broke the silence with words that resonated. "Are you thinking of keeping them, or just dragging them through more dying?" His tone lacked malice, yet his words carried a weight that hinted at his own understanding of pain. I hesitated before answering, not because I was short on thoughts, but because I was grappling with my feelings. Inside, I sensed a turning point, a struggle between choosing a seemingly easier path and making a decision that would deeply impact my heart. Word about the rescue spread rapidly, quicker than I had expected. By the 5th day, whispers flitted through the village like a gentle breeze, subtle yet persistent. When I walked into the corner store, I noticed 2 older women stop their conversation and look at me. Their stares were quick but felt intense. Then a boy I didn't know pointed at my coat pocket, where Miso liked to nestle, and asked if I was starting my own zoo. It wasn't meant to be unkind. Rather, it was a typical reaction in a close-knit community when something unusual shakes up the norm. The day took a turn when the landlord arrived unexpectedly. He stood on the porch with a clipboard and an overly cheerful smile. "I've heard about the animals," he said, his tone even. "This place wasn't really intended for pets, especially not several." He glanced toward the box Emiko had arranged under the kotatsu, where Nori was peeking out, curious yet defiant. I tried to explain my situation, but his concerns about potential damage and responsibility were clear, practical issues that made the conversation feel a bit less harsh. That evening, Emiko quietly prepared tea. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than usual, carrying a seriousness that wasn't quite sadness. They'll need a decision soon, a home, a future. Otherwise, someone else will make that choice for them. Her words lingered in the air, much like a second pot of tea we weren't ready to brew. Later that night, as rain gently tapped against the tin roof, I sat cross-legged beside the cardboard box, watching the kittens sleep. Earlier, Kiko had curled up next to my leg, purring softly, a comforting rhythm. Miso was snuggled against her mother, so tiny that I worried she might disappear if I blinked too quickly. Shizu, however, seemed different. Her breathing was steady, but her eyes told another story. When they opened, I saw a depth of wariness, as if she was weighing the worth of staying in this world. I found myself wondering, am I doing this for them or for myself? The idea of letting them go, to a shelter, into the unknown, felt like losing a piece of who I am. But what if keeping them meant tying them to a life I wasn't ready to provide? Before they came, my days were calm, predictable, and comfortable. Now my life centered around feeding schedules, careful baths, and the weighty sense of responsibility that caring for them brought. Emiko often said that the heart makes promises that the hands might struggle to keep. I didn't respond at that moment because deep down I knew she was right. Still, I wasn't quite ready to face the choice that lay ahead. By the 9th day, the kittens had started to play again. They took cautious steps over the folded blankets, dashed across the wooden floor with bursts of energy and batted at the specks of dust swirling in the afternoon sun. Shizu, though still fragile and slow, had begun to lift her head. Her gaze followed the other kittens with a sense of engagement, as if she was reconnecting with the world around her. For the first time, I let myself think maybe they would be okay. Unfortunately, that glimmer of hope faded quickly the very next morning. I found the back door slightly open, just enough for a little explorer to escape. I didn't notice the door at first. It was only when I reached for Nori's food bowl and discovered it was empty that alarm surged through me. Suddenly, I was combing through every corner of the house, peering into shadows and even checking behind cabinets. But Nori was nowhere to be found. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the ground wet and muddy, and paw prints scattered across the porch in every direction. We spent hours searching for him in the woods, calling his name until our voices were hoarse. Emiko remained calm and focused, but I could sense the tension in her shoulders, a worry she kept to herself. Toma showed up halfway through, silently offering me a flashlight, as if light alone could lead us to him. As night approached and Nori still hadn't returned, something changed inside me. The sense of control I thought I had began to slip away. I lay wide awake long after midnight, the door still slightly ajar, listening for sounds that never came. One kitten missing, one bond broken. All I could do was wait, for his return or for my guilt to sink in further. In the days that followed Nori's disappearance, the house took on a quietness that felt both heavy and alert. Each creak of the floorboards or breeze rustling through the bamboo made me glance toward the door, my heart caught between hope and worry. The other kittens, initially subdued, huddled closer together as they slept, staying near their mother. Even Shizu, who had started accepting soft food from Emiko's hand, spent long hours gazing toward the porch, as if she was anticipating something, or someone's, return. To fill the silence, I found myself talking to them more often. Each morning, I would sit quietly and read whatever book was close at hand, using the words to fill the silence around me. Kiko would often curl up on my lap, settling her little head right under my chin, purring softly. It felt like her soothing presence changed the mood of the room entirely. Meanwhile, Miso followed me closely, dragging her favorite stuffed mouse by its tail, her unblinking eyes always on me. They weren't just pets anymore. They had become part of my everyday life, subtly shaping my decisions. I noticed how I hesitated to answer calls or emails that suggested a return to my former routine. Emiko noticed my shifting attitude too. One evening, she remarked, "They're changing you." I almost argued with her, but deep down I knew there was truth in her words. I hadn't just rescued these animals. I had allowed them to fill a gap in my life that I hadn't even recognized. With Nori still missing and no news from the shelters or community members, it felt as if our connection was fragile, like we were putting on a brave face while pretending our family was complete. None of us knew how long we could keep up this pretense. On the 12th day, Emiko asked something I had been deliberately avoiding, like dodging a sharp turn. We were outside, shielded from the rain that drizzled down from the roof. Inside, Shizu was asleep with Miso nestled beside her, while Kiko was busy playing with a ribbon attached to a bag of rice. Emiko kept her gaze down as she spoke softly while sipping her tea. "If they stay, they'll need more than your affection. They'll need a life you haven't built yet." Her words didn't sting, rather they settled heavily in the space between us. I gazed toward the tree line, still hoping to see Nori slip out from the shadows, but it didn't happen. A question loomed in my mind. Was I keeping the others out of love, or was it simply fear of losing more? That evening, Toma showed up, holding something wrapped in cloth. It was an old wooden box containing a faded collar. Found it at the creek's edge, thought it might belong to him. He didn't need to say Nori's name, I understood. I took the box carefully, cradling it as if it could still hold some warmth from its past. After everyone had left, I sat beside Shizu and whispered the only truth I could find. I didn't know what I was doing, but I understood I couldn't go back. However, holding on to them meant committing to a life I wasn't ready for, while letting them go would surely lead to regret. Either way, I knew the choice would take something from me that I could never retrieve. The following day, after Toma had given me the collar, I found myself in front of the village shelter. It was a simple concrete building on the outskirts of town, surrounded by wire fences and worn-out toys. Inside, the air smelled like disinfectant mingled with a sense of despair. The receptionist handed me a clipboard without asking any questions, perhaps recognizing the look of someone torn between love and practicality. I stared at the blank forms, feeling as if time had frozen. I struggled to write down even one name. When I got home, Emiko was busy packing supplies, extra food, soft bedding, and refills of medication she had quietly ordered. She didn't ask about my visit. Instead, she gave me a knowing look, one that felt like a quiet understanding between friends. "I can handle them," she offered, "if you can't." There was no judgment in her voice, just an openness that allowed me to share my feelings or step back without shame. Yet my voice didn't come. Instead, I knelt by Shizu, my fingers brushing against her side, where her ribs were no longer visible. She leaned into my touch, her eyes closed in trust, a silent connection that resonated more than any confrontation. The kittens were sleeping peacefully, except for Kiko, who watched me with wide, unblinking eyes, as if she was waiting for the words I hadn't yet found. Outside, a crow called from the woods, its sound sharp and final, like the soft closing of a chapter giving way to something more permanent. I hadn't made my decision, but deep down, I knew I wouldn't find peace until I did. The next morning came slowly, wrapped in a gray light that felt uncertain, caught between storm clouds and calm. I saw the light fill the room, casting bright spots in the corners where shadows still lingered. Kiko was the first to move, stretching by my leg before curling up against my side, as if hesitant to voice the question hanging in the silence. I hadn't slept all night. I couldn't. Every time I tried to drift off, the memory of that clipboard sliding across the shelter counter echoed in my mind, the weight of my uncertainty heavier than any answer. Emiko was already outside in the garden, her sleeves rolled up, diligently working the soil with a practiced ease that showed she knew the right time to act and when to wait. She looked up briefly, offered a small nod, and returned to pulling weeds. There was no need for further discussion. The decision was mine to make, unspoken yet clear. I noticed Shizu curled protectively around Miso. Her breathing was slow but growing steadier. Somehow, she felt my gaze and opened her eyes. There was no fear or urgency in her look, just a sense of calm. She wasn't waiting for rescue. She had survived, and that realization was what truly mattered. When the knock on the door came, it surprised me. Toma was standing there, his expression hard to read. He didn't step inside. Instead, he handed me a worn envelope. Inside were old photos, faded and water-damaged, showing another litter, another time, and another regret. He remained silent. He didn't need to say anything. Sometimes the silence of others can lead us to the choices we need to make. My decision wasn't like a scene from a movie with dramatic music. It was quieter and more gradual, rising from deep within me before I even had the words to express it. I stepped onto the porch, Kiko nestled in my jacket, her tiny claws gently gripping the fabric near my collarbone. The breeze brought familiar scents of damp cedar and moist earth. In the distance, an unfamiliar bird repeated its call, as if trying to remember something important. I found Emiko deeply focused on her gardening. She didn't look up, and I didn't ask for her thoughts. I simply shared what was on my mind, like a breath escaping me. "They stay, if they'll have me." Emiko paused, not for drama, but to acknowledge the weight of my words. A faint smile spread across her face before she continued digging. Later that day, I cleared the back room and set up soft bedding, old sweaters, and a clean dish of water. I gently carried Shizu there. She didn't resist, blinking slowly as if she sensed the changes around us. In that moment, the house changed. It didn't feel heavier or louder. It felt fuller. It transformed from merely a place to sleep into a space filled with promise, created in silence without any formal agreements. Yet as evening fell and the kitten snuggled close, a thought lingered in my mind. Someone was still missing. Nori's absence transformed from a sharp pain into a familiar shape, like navigating a room with one door closed. In moments of hope, we leave that door slightly ajar, just in case. Rescue stories don't always wrap up with a happy cat soaking in the sun or a home brimming with toys. Some end quietly, where your heartbeat matches another's, reflecting the choice to step into a complicated but meaningful situation and and stay. As the weeks passed, the kittens grew stronger, becoming louder, bolder, and full of life. Miso learned to climb chair legs, while Kiko found a cozy spot nestled in my laundry basket, resting on top of my clothes. Shizu started to gain weight, uncovering a dignity that had been hidden for too long. Her once fearful eyes now watched me with a calm trust, as she discovered what it truly meant to feel safe. Even now, I'm still searching for Nori. I keep bowls under the porch and leave the door slightly open on clear nights. Sometimes I imagine him peeking out from the trees, curious and wild, different from the others around him. People often wonder if I'll take on another rescue. To be honest, I'm uncertain. This one came when I least expected it, just like many meaningful moments in life often do. I've learned that love doesn't always have clear signs. It might show up when you're exhausted, bringing a gentle weight beside you after a long day. Love can leave marks, but it can also make you feel more whole than before. As you think about your own choices, consider what you might be holding on to that you could let go of. Does this story resonate with you? Maybe it sparks a memory or prompts you to pause and reflect. Remember, you're not alone. These quiet, transformative rescues may not make headlines, but they can change lives in unexpected ways. If you've ever welcomed an animal in need into your life, I'd love to hear your story. Please share it in the comments. And if you know someone who understands the art of nurturing the fragile, feel free to send this their way. If you're interested in more authentic stories like this, consider subscribing. There's certainly more to come. It may not always be tidy, but it will always be sincere. Thank you for being here. Wherever you are, remember to keep your heart open, just in case.